It was a day that felt full of promise and excitement as my family and I made our way to the airport to pick up my auntie and her daughter. They had been living in Australia for several years, and we hadn't seen them in that time. The anticipation of reuniting with family after so long made the entire day feel significant. My sister, mom, grandma, and I all set out together, looking forward to seeing them again. The thought of what the day would bring filled the car with energy as we drove towards the airport. As we traveled, the atmosphere was calm, the streets quiet, but there was a sense of excitement building in the air. My mom and grandma chatted away about the reunion, discussing all the things we planned to do, the places we wanted to visit, and of course, catching up on everything that had happened since we last saw each other. My sister, as usual, was quieter, her thought likely drifting towards the excitement of seeing her cousins again after such a long time. I was equally excited, but I also found myself thinking about how much had changed in the years since we'd last met. By the time we arrived at the airport, we were all buzzing with anticipation. There's always something special about waiting for someone you love to arrive after a long time. The hustle and bustle of the airport filled the air with a lively energy as we made our way to the arrival area. The sounds of people talking, announcement echoing over the speaker, and movement of people rushing past all blended together in a kind of chaotic harmony. It was the perfect setting for such an emotional day. We found our place near the baggage claim area and waited eagerly. The minutes seemed to stretch into hours, but as we glanced at the clock, we knew it would be long before their flight landed. It was a little overwhelming. The thought that soon would be all reunited, my heart raced a bit as I thought about what it would be like to see them again after such a long time. Finally, the moment arrived. The doors to the baggage claim open area open, and there they were, my auntie and her daughter, stepping through with their luggage. The reunion was simple, but it was everything we had hoped for. The year apart melted away in an instant. We hugged them. There was no need for elaborate speeches, no need for any grand gestures. The joy was written on all of our faces as we saw each other, and the warmth of the moment was enough to fill the space between us. My auntie looked just as I remember her, and her daughter had grown into a young woman. But despite the time that had passed, there was an undeniable familiarity in their face that made it feel like no time had passed at all. The distance that had kept us apart now felt like a distant memory as we stood there, holding each other in that long awaited embrace. We made our way out of the airport with their bags, still talking and catching up. The air outside felt fresh, and the day was warm. We were all eager to hear about the time in Australia, to learn about the life they had built there. My auntie shared story about how different things were, what they had been doing, and how much they had missed us. Her daughter had become a young woman, her voice more mature and her presence stronger, but the bond between us hadn't faded. It was a special moment, simply sharing the journey back home, listening to their stories, and feeling the connection once more. When we arrived at home, it was already late in the afternoon, since we were all together and we hadn't seen each other so long. We decided to go for dinner as a family. We headed to Laya restaurant, a place we all loved. It wasn't just the food that made it special. It was the atmosphere, the familiarity, and the fact that it had become a tradition for us. Every time we went there, it felt like coming home, like being wrapped in the warmth of family and togetherness. The restaurant was already bustling when we arrived, the table filled with families and groups of people, all there to enjoy good food and good company. As we walked in, we table where's my uncle, cousins, and other family members were already gathered. There was a noticeable buzz of energy in the air, a mix of excitement and joy at the reunion. It felt like it felt like the entire family was coming together to celebrate not just the return of my auntie and her daughter, but the bond that connected us all. The dinner started off as it always did, with laughter, chatter, and shared sense of anticipation. The table was quickly filled with a variety of dishes: fresh seafood, tender grilled meat, colorful vegetables, and a selection of sides that complemented the main courses. It was the kind of meal where everyone digs in with enthusiasm, where you can help but take a little of everything, tasting each dish, savoring the flavor. The food was always delicious, but made it special was the company. There's something about sharing a meal with family that turns a simple dinner into a cherished memory. Throughout the meal, the conversation flowed freely. My auntie and her daughter were immediately surrounded by questions and stories from the rest of the family. Everyone wanted to know what they had been up to, what life was like in Australia, and how things had changed since they left. At the same time, my auntie and her daughter were equally eager to hear what had happened at home, who had moved, who had gotten married, and the little updates from everyone's life. It was like a game catch up with each person, their own slice of life since the last time we had been together. My auntie, who had been away for so long, was clearly overwhelmed with the warmth of the gathering. It was evident that she had missed us, and now that she was back, the joy of being surrounded by family was something she had longed for. Her daughter seemed equally happy to be with all of us again, her smile lighting up the room as she listened to the conversation and shared her own story. It was a reunion full of laughter, love, and little bit of nostalgia. As the evening wore on, the food was slowly finished, and the conversation began to slow down. It was getting late, and we knew that there was still one more stop before the night would be over. After the dinner, we all decided to head over my uncle's house. It wasn't far, and the drive was quick, but there was something about going to his house that made the evening even more special. My uncle had been eagerly waiting to see his sister after such a long time, and the anticipation was tangible. When we arrived at my uncle's house, the door opened almost immediately, and there he was, standing with a huge smile on his face. He welcomed everyone inside, and the between my auntie and uncle was heartfelt. They hadn't seen each other in so long, and it was clear from the way they embraced that this moment was long awaited. The connection between them was deep, filled with love and memories of years gone by. Inside the house, it was cozy, familiar. The living room was filled with family members, and the warmth of gathering made the house feel alive. There was no need for grand gesture or elaborate speeches. The simple act of being together was enough. My auntie and uncle began to share stories from the past, reminiscing with their childhood about growing up together and the moment that had shaped their life. It was a beautiful moment watching them share memories that I hadn't heard before. I remi- that remind me of the importance of family history and the deep roots that connect us. As the evening went on, the house became filled with more laughter and conversation. My cousins joined us, and soon the living room was hub of activity. Some of us sat down chatting about everything from work to school to family updates. Others were more reflective, listening to the story of the past. There was something comforting about the way the evening unfolded. It wasn't about doing something extraordinary. It was about being together, enjoying each other's presence, and appreciating the time we had. By 8 p.m., the evening was winding down. People were starting to leave, heading back to their homes after a long day of celebrations. We stayed a little bit longer, chatting and soaking in the moment. There was no rush. We had all the time in the world to savor the reunion, to cherish the little things that made the evening so memorable. When it was finally time to leave, we said our goodbye, promising to meet again soon. The drive back home was peaceful. My aunt and her daughter had settled into the back seat, chatting quiet among themselves, while my mom, grandma, and sister shared the thought about the day. As we reached our destination, it was clear that the day had been special, not because as the place we had gone, but because of the moment we shared. The evening wasn't just about the dinner or the reunion at my uncle's house. It was about reconnecting, about remembering what matters most. Family is the thread that ties us together, even when distance and time try to pull us apart. This day remind me of that in the most beautiful day.